There's a video. Maybe you have already seen it. If you have not, you are about to understand exactly why the entire basketball world cannot stop talking about IT. IT is a timeout during a nationally televised game. The Indiana Fever are getting blown out by the Portland Fire, a team they were favored to beat by 12 points. And right there on the sideline, in front of thousands in the arena and millions watching at home, head coach Stephanie White leans forward and starts jabbing her finger directly at Caitlin Clark, repeatedly slapping her knee. Animated, intense. Whatever was being said, it was not gentle, and Caitlin Clark, the most watched player in women's basketball history, sat there first, drinking water, looking away until she couldn't anymore. Then her hands went up, words were exchanged, and seconds later, Clark was pulled from a game. That moment did not come out of nowhere. It was an explosion at the end of a very long fuse. And if you want to actually understand what is happening inside that franchise, you have to go back further than the clip that went viral. Before we get into all of it, if this kind of deep breakdown is what you are here for, hit that subscribe button right now and drop a like on this video. We are going places most coverage is too scared to go, and you do not want to miss what comes next. Let's start with something that happened before the sideline confrontation even took place, because it tells you everything about the communication breakdown that had already set in. On May 20th, the Indiana Fever was set to play the Portland Fire. Caitlin Clark was not on the injury report. And warning. No flag, and indication from the team that anything was wrong. Then, less than 2 hours before tip-off, the Fever announced she was out, back stiffness. Game time decision turned into no game, just like that. Now, players miss games with back issues. That is not unusual in and of itself. What made this different was the way it was handled, or rather, the way it wasn't. When head coach Stephanie White was asked about it before the game, she said, and this is a direct quote, "She is healthy, and we are not managing anything." Then after the game, White admitted Clark had not practiced a day before and had received treatment. She woke up stiff and sore, and it became a whole planned SO. Which is it? Is she healthy, or is it a back issue they are carefully managing? The WNBA noticed the contradiction too. The league issued a formal warning to the Fever for failing to list Clark properly on the injury report. Teams can be fined for exactly this kind of procedural failure. The Las Vegas Aces were a hit for something similar with Aya Wilson back in 2024, but the Fever got a warning. And for a team already under microscope because of their star player, it was the worst possible optics. Here is where it gets even more layered. A longtime beat writer who covers both the Fever and the Pacers reported that Clark's absence was part of what he called a strategic management plan for the season, meaning the team was being deliberately cautious given how many games she missed injury the year before. A reasonable thing to report, a responsible thing for a journalist, a flag for readers who were confused about why their franchise player disappeared from the lineup without warning, and the Indiana Fever's response. They revoked his press credentials entirely. A writer who had covered the team for years, who had attended every home game, every playoff game, every training camp gone. Context for what we are talking about here. Caitlin Clark is averaging 20.1 points per game in 2026. That is a career high. She is averaging over 8 assists per game. Through her first 63 professional games, she has the highest assist percentage of any player in WNBA history, not just among active players all time. Her impact on every offensive possession. The Fever run is immeasurable by normal metrics, and yet the team sits around 500. They are the highest scoring offense in the league, but they rank near the bottom in scoring defense. Teams have figured out something specific. Isolate Clark defensively, force her guard one-on-one, and she becomes a target. Just 4 games. She defended more isolation plays than any player over a 4-game stretch in 3 years. What you have is a player carrying an enormous offensive load, being hunted defensively, managing a chronic back problem, and still putting up historically elite numbers. That is not a player who is a problem. That is a player being asked to do everything without the full structural support to make it sustainable. And that context matters when you try to understand what that sideline moment was really about. Not everyone is interested in nuanced months, though, and into that void walked Jason Whitlock, who took the situation and turned the volume all the way up. His argument was direct and unambiguous. He said Caitlin Clark has to demand a trade, right now, immediately. He said she cannot trust her head coach, her assistant coaches, her general manager, or the team president. He went further and said she may not even be able to trust her own agent, that Clark is surrounded by people who do not wish her harm but are running for cover because the situation has gotten too combustible to manage. Now, Whitlock is a commentator who thrives in controversy, and it is worth acknowledging that his opinions are designed to provoke. But even if you dismiss a delivery, the underlying question he is raising is one that the Fever's front office has to be asking themselves in private. Because at some point, the optics of a franchise as chaotic become a reality, and stars with options, genuine stars with Clark's leverage and profile, do not stay in chaos indefinitely. What Whitlock identified, even if them perfectly, is that the trust problem inside this organization is not just between two people on a sideline. It runs from the front office's relationship with the media to the coaching staff communication about injuries to the way the franchise handles scrutiny more broadly when a response to hard questions is to strip a veteran journalist of the credentials. That is a cultural signal. IT tells you something about how leadership responds to pressure, and that pressure did not start in 2026, that if you've been paying attention. Since Clark's first season, you know there were signs of dysfunction far earlier. In games, in press conferences, in moments that felt wrong when they happened and looked even worse in hindsight. There was a game where Clark dropped 32 points and was perfect from a free throw line all night, 11 for 11, carrying a team that had no business staying in that game without her. And when Stephanie White addressed the locker room after the buzzer, she spoke about heart and collective spirit and coming together. Never once mentioned Clark by name. Not the 32 points, not the free throws, nothing. Then at the podium, she found language for the building blocks of the franchise. She talked about having special pieces at point guard and center. She mentioned Kelsey Mitchell's 19 points, called a quiet 19, and framed it as a co-star contribution. 19 points on 7 for 17 shooting in a game where Mitchell had made a reckless, selfish shot attempt in the closing moments that nearly handed the game to the other team. And White stood there and treated it like a pillar of the offense. There was the overtime play where Clark was explicitly told on the sideline, "We are running the pick and roll, you come off the screen, you get the ball, you go to the line." That was the plan. Explained to her, she checked and she ran the route, she got to the screen, and the ball went somewhere else. Then they called timeout and drew up the exact same play. Clark checked and again, same route, same screen, and again, the ball went elsewhere. The cameras caught the moment her hands went up in disbelief. The same gesture you saw in 2026, the same look of someone processing a betrayal in real time and try and stay professional while doing it. These are not isolated incidents. They are a pattern, and patterns, once you can see them, are very difficult to unsee. Here is what makes all of this especially painful from a franchise perspective. The window they are operating in is not infinite. It is not even particularly wide. When Caitlin Clark came into the WNBA, she did not just bring talent. She brought an entirely new audience. Ratings surged. Road arenas had been echoing with empty seats for years started selling out. Merchandise revenue climbed in ways a league had not seen in decades. The cultural moment was real and measurable and historic, and it was attached specifically to her. The Indiana Fever had that. They had her in their building, wearing their jersey, doing things on a basketball court that nobody in the history of women's professional basketball had done at her age, at this pace, with this level of national attention. The blueprint for building something lasting was sitting right there in front of them. You protect your star. You build the right culture. You make her want to stay. You make Indiana a destination instead of a stopover. Instead, the franchise has spent 2 seasons lurching from one controversy to the next. A journalist loses his credentials for doing his job. The league has to formally warn the team about injury, report compliance. A sideline argument goes viral, and the conversation becomes about whether the head coach and the player even have a functional relationship, regardless of what both of them say publicly. Clark is 24 years old. She is at the absolute beginning of what could be one of the most remarkable careers in this league's history. She has already set records. she is already operating in an assist percentage no one in the history of the WNBA has matched through 63 games, and she is managing a chronic back issue while absorbing more defensive punishment than almost anyone in the league because teams have identified her as the pressure point. You do not treat that kind of player like a problem to manage. You treat her like a generational asset, and you build everything around protecting her, and the evidence. All of it, from the botched injury report to the press conference silencito, the viral timeout suggests that at some fundamental level, this organization has not figured out how to do that. Now, here is the part that should make every Indiana fan uncomfortable, because the real danger is not the current season's record. 500 with Clark coming back from an injury year and integrating new pieces is not a catastrophe. The real danger is what Caitlin Clark is watching, filing away, and eventually making a decision about. Athletes at this level are not passive. They notice everything. They notice when the locker room speech after a historic performance does not include their name. They notice when the play draws